important is it to read and write the language that we speak? Now, I'd like you to imagine for a minute that you had to go through the rest of this conference, starting right now, without being able to read your schedule or any of the signs posted or anything online about the conference. If you could not read anything, how would it go for you? How do you think you'd get through the rest of this conference? Might be challenging. Yet that's often how I feel we expect couples to do when they get engaged. And we ask them to practice NFP in their marriage. How many of you have heard of couples that learn NFP as part of marriage prep and they ask, why wasn't I taught this sooner? Just this morning we heard this come up in one of the talks. Or maybe, like my husband and I, we spent a good 10 years going once a month to our parish to teach couples an introductory session on NFP, engaged couples, and many of them, we already knew when they walked in the door they weren't going to use it. They had made up their mind about how they were going to manage their fertility. So how important is literacy? How important is it to be able to read and write this language of the body, not just speak it, as married couples do? That's what we're going to be talking about today. I would like to, now you can open your eyes, and you can use your programs. And I would like to introduce our first speaker, Brenda Cerkez, who is Executive Director of Family Honor Incorporated, which works with young parents and ministry leaders across the United States and internationally who are interested in programs that recognize the importance of family and the unique role of parents in speaking with their children about chastity and the beauty of God's gift of sexuality. She has appeared on EWTN Live, Catholic Connection, On Call with Wendy Weise, and numerous other Catholic programs. We're going to give Brenda about 10 or so minutes, and because we just have the two of us, I probably will let her go longer. Then I will present, then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So please welcome Brenda.
Thanks, Suzanne. Alrighty. Okay, can everybody hear? Is that okay? All right. Well, very good. Well, first of all, I am just so glad to be here. I think this is just such a positive, hopeful conference, and it's just uplifting to me personally, as I'm sure it is to most of you. I got to ask you, as a South Carolina gal, and considering we're on the West Coast, just a show of hands, before this conference, or maybe even this workshop, how many of y'all had heard of Family Honor? So some, but not a lot. A fresh crowd. I love it. Okay. I don't necessarily like to read my talks, but as I often say, I can remember the entire lyrics from the theme song from the Beverly Hillbillies, but can't memorize a speech, so there you have it. Okay. Well, as some of you may know, the mission of Family Honor is to provide and promote a family-centered Catholic approach to chastity education. We do this primarily through our parent-only or parent-teen programs, which are delivered in group settings at Catholic parishes in South Carolina and then in 8 other states and counting. Our programs are presented by adult men and women who have been professionally prepared as chastity presenters. So as part of our overall program delivery, how does Family Honor educate young women about their cycles? And I thought really in preparing this talk, I like to have little ways of remembering things. So I thought maybe an easy way of remembering how Family Honor delivers our programs is to think of us as the 5 C's. The 5 C's. So you're about to find out what that is. We do have a variety of programs, but fertility awareness specifically is primarily done through our parent-teen program called Real Love and Real Life. for parents to attend with their 7th or 8th grade son or daughter. And in this program, our purpose is to explore God's special gift of human fertility and the beauty and the wonder of growing up and becoming an adult. So, let's start getting into the 5 C's. Here we go. The first C is context. The first C is context, and I think this is important. To reemphasize, since Family Honor has a family-centered approach to chastity education, at least one, or preferably both, of the teen's parents or guardians must attend and participate in any Family Honor program for which they register their son or daughter. Although the parents and the teens are all together in one room for most of the 3-session program, for the fertility appreciation session, we break out so that dads and sons are in one room and moms and daughters are in another. So for the moms and daughters, even though there is naturally a little bit of awkwardness, just as there is for the dads and sons, because we're talking about topics relating to sexuality, fertility, anatomy and physiology, there is also a certain comfort level, including the fact that the presenters from Family Honor in each room are the same sex. So for the dads and the boys over here in this other room, you've got Family Honor male presenters, and from the moms and the daughters in another room, you've got female Family Honor presenters. This context and comfort level is very important, we feel, for effective presentations on fertility appreciation. Along these lines, I thought it would be interesting for you to hear some feedback from teens about the overall Real Love and Real Life program. We always do evaluations, send out evaluations after our program to both the parents and the teens, because we want to know what they thought, how this impacted them, what their suggestions are for improvement. So over the years, there are certain responses that come back that just seem like these are some of the most common responses, even though people put it in different ways, even though the teens put it in different ways. So here are some of the responses from teens as far as what they like best about this program. What I like best, that we learned about our chastity. What I like best, that honesty was shown. What I like best, the way the presenters explained things, the friendliness of the presenters, how much the presenters taught me. Note how many comments, because we do, are about the presenters, the person delivering the message, and their believability, their authenticity, and whether they really believe in what they're saying. Very significant. What I like best, how it was very interactive. Oh, this is a good comment. What I like best, it was not as bad as I thought. What I like best, talking about what I should do when I grow up. I like best the communication session. I liked becoming closer to my parents and myself. I liked working with my parent. I liked the discussions on theology. I liked talking in small groups and the activities. I liked the openness to explaining God's gift of sex. Okay, on to the second C, communication. Since the fertility appreciation portion of our program is actually the second session of what amounts to a 3-session program, sometimes it's given all on a Saturday, sometimes it's in the evening, a week apart for 3 weeks in a row. The moms and daughters in this program have already received a copy of Family Honor's Our Power to Love book. Suzanne, could you hand me that bag, please? I meant to. Yes. I brought along just a couple of books to show you. Of course, they're at the bottom of the bag. Family Honor has created some books that go along with our curricula and that also are available for anybody that wants to buy them. But this goes in with the communication portion. Leading up to the fertility appreciation section, we have already given the parents and the teen Our Power to Love, okay? And we also have it, because we do some Spanish-speaking programs, we have just recently translated this book into Spanish as well. If you're interested in finding out more about the book, ask me later. But in other words, we've already been tilling the soil by talking about communication, by giving, in this case, the moms and the daughters books that they can start to look over together. So, and they are encouraged to look over it together. That's what it's all about. So this book provides a very basic overview of male and female anatomy, an explanation of hormones, and how those hormones differ in males and females. Also included are the seasons of fertility and the signs of fertility to look for. In this breakout session, we also do a PowerPoint presentation that is a companion piece to the Our Power to Love book. That is also available too for anybody to purchase. And I think this is a good point as well to mention that really the primary reason we deliver our chastity programs in a family-centered context is that we want to help enhance that parent-child communication and sense of connectedness. And remember that word connectedness. That's another important C, actually. Because essentially, research has shown over the years that if you're looking at a way to reduce risk-taking behavior in adolescence, the single most effective, determinator of children choosing not to engage in risk-taking behavior, and by risk-taking behavior research in really the biggest study that was ever done on this back in 1997, and they're still pulling data from it. Basically, the biggest thing that you can do is enhance that sense of parent-child connectedness. And the researchers define connectedness as the sense of warmth and caring that the child perceives, that teen perceives. Not necessarily how the parent feels, like I'm doing a great job here, but what the teen is perceiving. So that's important, the sense of communication and connectedness. So in addition to talking about fertility awareness in the second session of the program, we spend time in the other sessions talking about and demonstrating the different styles of healthy communication in families. And we cover other key topics as well, such as peer pressure, the appropriate steps to good same-sex and opposite-sex friendship, future dating behavior, the qualities of Christ-like love, and much more. So it's what we would call a whole person approach, a whole person sexuality, a holistic approach. And for this reason, the parents and the adolescents, since they've attended the program together and gone through the fertility appreciation together, they have a well of language and experience that they can draw from for the future, because we're not always going to be around when they want to talk about this stuff. You know, very often, if many of you as parents or as you talk to your friends, you know, these topics come up when you least expect it often. You're driving along in the car to basketball practice and something comes up, or something comes up on TV. When you go to a family honor program and the parents and teens are hearing about and talking about fertility awareness and all these other interconnected topics, they are establishing a common language. We give that common language. Okay, on to the third C, clarity. One of the best things about the fertility awareness segment in our Real Love and Real Life program is that it also offers a chance for clarity for the daughters and the moms. And clarity not just with the information we present, but because we also allow times for the moms and the daughters to write down questions anonymously, which our experienced presenters then answer in a factual and age-appropriate way. And one of the things I did when I was preparing this talk was I went to some of our most seasoned presenters for Family Honor and said, what are some of the questions? What are the most common questions that young people are asking and that their moms are asking too? So the questions from moms and daughters. The most common topic seems to be about their period for these young women. When is it normal to get it? How long it lasts? When it becomes regular? They also ask when and how a girl can get pregnant. Can you get pregnant on your period? Can you get pregnant before you start having periods? Can you get pregnant the first time you have intercourse? It's a common theme here, it seems like. Timing. This is another key area. Questions about the menstrual cycle, signs and symptoms, timing for intercourse. And our presenter said there always seems to be a question or comment about the 3 days after ovulation. I also asked, just for the heck of it, some of our, our program director, who is a man and who has done a lot of our programs, I said, what seems to be the question that most of the boys ask in the dads and sons session? And this was interesting. It kind of goes in a little bit different direction. He said the most common question is, do girls have a sex drive? Interesting. However, it is important to note that young women don't always ask the questions that need to be answered, and thus very often it's their moms who ask the questions because either the moms want to know or they want their daughter to hear the answer in this context. So for the moms, we usually get a question about behavior, such as, what about oral sex? Or how can a girl say no to sexual pressure? And likewise, just to be perfectly frank, sometimes there are a question or two that needs to be asked that's not asked, and so we will basically put that question out there and answer it. The fourth C, chastity, very important one. Needless to say, the virtue of chastity is a core part of all of our Family Honor programs. It's a core part of our mission statement and why we were created. And so it's a core part of this Real Love and Real Life program. One thing that we find we must regularly do, though, is explain the difference between chastity and abstinence, and how chastity is not saying no, it's saying a big, enthusiastic yes to God's plan for our sexuality. It's a positive good. Chastity is also a wonderful and important virtue, of course, to carry into marriage or into adulthood as a single person, a priest or religious sister, certainly, again, if you enter the vocation of marriage, and it is essential to learning self-mastery. Some other interesting and I think important feedback, in the evaluations we send out after each of our programs, we do ask the teens if they agree with this statement. This program helped me better understand my sexuality and chastity. In the last program year report that we have, and we compile them every year, 92% of teens agreed with this statement, including some who very strongly agreed with this statement. So it's making an impact on the teens. And then likewise, 96% of parents agreed with the statement. This program will help me better communicate with my child about sexuality and chastity, with 76% of parents very strongly or strongly agreeing. So not just agreeing. Okay, as we wind down, the final C, Catholic. Family Honor is a Catholic organization, but even in a broader sense, we're a Christian organization, and I think you could actually say we're grounded in traditional Judeo-Christian morality. Family Honor presents our programs, including Real Love and Real Life, grounded in Scripture, grounded in the beautiful teaching of St. John Paul II's Theology of the Body, which many of us just heard about in listening to George Weigel talk, and other wonderful documents, including Humanae Vitae and Familiaris Consortio. These are all what we draw from when we had put together the 4 different curriculums for our parent-child programs. The Our Power to Love book, which I had previously mentioned, opens each chapter with a scripture verse. And it's also divided into 2 parts, with part 1 focusing on our sexual bodies and part 2 focusing on who we are as persons. Again, the holistic approach. Thus, we provide perspective for these young women and their moms that talks not only about fertility awareness, anatomy, and physiology, but also the fact that being created male and female in God's image gives each person true dignity and true worth. These young women hear, see, and read in our material, my body is a visible image of the invisible God. My body is a sacrament, small s, or a sign of my person. My body expresses who I am. To harm my body is to harm myself. Knowledge of my body leads to knowledge of myself and God. And the dignity and value of sexuality make marriage and virginity or celibacy loving choices. In closing, I think this observation from a mom in one of our most recent Real Love and Real Life programs says beautifully the effect of a Family Honor program, as she describes the dads and boys and moms and girls coming back together as a full group in the big room after they have just had their breakout sessions on the fertility awareness. And for the most part, the boys' session is almost exactly like the girls' section. There's some minor differences. Anyhow, this mom went on to comment to us, I liken it to a large bell going off, the Family Honor program. It opened up an opportunity for candid discussion. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when we reconvened in the JP2 Center with both boys and girls and parents, there was a great sense of peace in the room. I think each boy and girl had already begun respecting each other more. I believe this was also the work of the Holy Spirit. I learned a lot about anatomy of a man and woman, even as an adult. I'm going to stop there, and certainly we'll take time for questions, but I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I love the part where you said giving an enthusiastic yes. It's not a no, it's an enthusiastic yes to God's design. And let's face it that I need you to unlock this. The title of our conference is Faithful to God's Design. How can we be faithful if we don't know the design? And the design is not simple. It's beautifully complex and it's elegant and it takes time. And that's what Teen Star is about, taking time to teach the design. Steve. So my organization is called Teen Star, and when I say it's my organization, it's definitely not my organization. It was founded some 30 years ago when Dr. John Billings met Dr. Hannah Klaus, who was my boss, and asked if she could perhaps come up with a way to teach fertility awareness to teenagers, because of course he originated the Billings method, and he and his wife Lynn were teaching this to engaged and married couples. But he felt strongly, even that long ago, that young people needed to have this information. And I'll tell you another ironic thing about teaching teens fertility awareness, and that is some of you may have heard of the name of Carl Gerasi. He was the chemist at Stanford who formulated the birth control pill. And over time, he came to regret his involvement with that and said that it was never to be used the way it ended up being used, and promoted the idea that teenagers should learn their own fertility and monitor it naturally, and actually left academia and founded a business to invent a fertility monitor. But unfortunately, he passed away before they were able to do that. But he was a big believer in fertility literacy for young people. I actually had the pleasure of meeting him, which was an interesting experience, and it's also what promoted me to further my study of teen literacy, and that's where I discovered Teen Star, a fertility literacy curriculum. Teen Star is age appropriate. It includes programming for middle school students, high school, and college students. It is, excuse me. It does teach fertility observation and tracking, but not for the purposes of family planning, because of course teenagers are not planning families, but as a health habit. And it teaches the young men about the woman's cycle, and it has them learn their own signs of fertility. And then they actually end up doing a program that sort of is a tandem to the women's tracking and observing of their fertility. The young men actually observe and track their emotional changes, the changes of of growing into manhood. So there's a social emotional component for young men. And again, we do our classes sex segregated. So boys and girls are separated when they learn about the anatomy and physiology, and then they come together at the end for the kind of the second half of the program. The observation and tracking of these signs helps young people discover the spiritual, intellectual, physical, social, and emotional aspects of their sexuality. The course is designed to run over a school year. It meets once a week as a class. Some of the units are sex segregated, some they meet together. And then there's a one-on-one meeting with the instructor. The young women meet with a female teacher, the young men meet with a male teacher, and that's about once a month. It can be taught in health, biology, or religion courses, or as an after-school elective. The STAR in Teen Star is an acronym, and it stands for Sexuality Teaching in the context of adult responsibility. And the one important thing I liked about Teen Star, besides the fact that it teaches fertility literacy, is that it's very much based on self-discovery. We do not have an agenda with these students. We're not telling them what to do. We guide the students to discover their fertility for themselves. And then they, through that, explore the purpose of sexuality and then the consequences of possible behavior choices. We help them look at sex in terms of their short-term goals and their long-term goals. Unlike programs which tell students maybe that they need to just use contraceptives because they're going to have sex anyway, or just say no, wait, till you're married, Teen Star respects the free will of its students. And there have been concerns that teens might start sexual activity sooner if they have this knowledge of the cycle, but as a matter of fact, those concerns have been unfounded. There was a large study in 2014 that showed that virginity was maintained by 97 to 99% of Teen Star participants. And almost half, 40 to 50% of students who had been previously sexually active discontinued their sexual activity once they learned about their body and their cycle and started tracking it on a regular basis. The last thing I would say about Teen Star, besides the fact that it's a health habit, it's a health literacy habit, it is based on self-discovery, is that it does take time. If you think about, like we talked earlier, learning to read and write, it's not something you can do in a day or a weekend. Good things take time. That's why the program is designed to last a year long. And it can be taught, again, in schools or parishes or even community clinics. It can include church teaching because it's based on the Catholic or Judeo-Christian view of marriage and sexuality. And of course, we, as Catholic teachers, can incorporate the theology of the body depending on the setting. But we also have a secular version which is based on natural law and can be taught anywhere. It was even chosen by, Teen Star was chosen by the United States Agency for International Development to be used in sites worldwide. And it has been taught in over 35 countries: North, South America, Central America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Now, I mentioned my boss, Sister Hannah, and she unfortunately was not able to be here, but my husband should have passed out an article about her. Hopefully you all have a copy of it. Are you going to do that for us? Okay. Sister Hannah turned 90 years old this year. I cannot keep up with her. She is better with the technology and the telephone and everything than I am. And she will complain that the hardest place to bring Teen Star is the US because so many of us here are afraid to talk about sex. Sister Hannah was born in Vienna, so she has a little different approach to this. And I want to go home and tell her that we're not afraid. We can start talking about sex with teens because it's been shown that it's good for them. It's good for them to learn about themselves. The body, the language of the body is very powerful. It is a curriculum in and of itself. So fertility literacy is learning the language of the body. It's learning to read and write the language of the body. It liberates teens and youths to think for themselves, to move away from peer pressure, to discover how beautifully they are made. And as they understand their fertility and know the signs of it, they can then later in life add the family planning aspect to achieve or avoid a pregnancy. And that we call fertility fluency. But you don't become fluent until you start with the literacy piece. I just wanted to let you know that we have a table. We're sharing a table over there in the exhibit hall. And if there's anyone interested in knowing more about Teen Star and perhaps feels called to work with teenagers, we do have a training coming up next month in San Diego, just a couple hours south of here. I have all that information at our table. You do not have to be a nurse. I'm a nurse. Sister Hannah's a doctor. You do not have to have a medical background. You just have to accept the philosophy of Teen Star, which is what we discussed based on the Judeo-Christian understanding of marriage and the person, based on respecting the self-discovery of teens, and liking teenagers. So if you feel called, please come and talk to me. And thank you so much. So now we're going to open it up for questions. And I would invite you, if you do have a question, to please come up to the microphone so we can all hear, and it will get on the recording for us. Can you come up? And you can address your question to either of us.
About the family honor question,
Can you
the age you work with is 7th and 8th graders?
That's just for one of our programs.
Okay.
That's the question was. Thank you. The question was the age that Family Honor works with is that basically 7th and 8th graders. That tends to be our most popular program, the Real Love in Real Life, which is the one that I described, and it is for parents with their 7th or 8th grader. It tends to be the most popular program because at that point parents are in a panic. So many have come to us and said, my son or daughter was just such a lovely little person, and then they hit puberty, and there's just such a change in their personality. So that is, like I said, in many ways the most popular, but we do have 3 other programs. One of the ones that we're actually doing the most now, and actually recommending the most for parishes that have never had Family Honor come in, and we recommend it the most for 2 reasons. One, it's the easiest program for us to do, like traveling long distance, which we do for a number of our programs because we're not in every state. But it also gives parishes and parents a good place to start with the foundation, and that program is Leading and Loving. Basically, this is a program that no children come to at all, no young people. It's a program for parents with younger children, say any child from really infancy through about age 10 or 11. And we developed this program because what we were finding is a couple things. Parents, including some of our own presenters who had young children, but certainly a whole lot of parents out there with young children were saying, you know, they're asking questions really early. And then for parents who had had older children, you know, my kid didn't ask this kind of stuff until they were, you know, maybe in 6th grade or something like that. And kids are coming home from kindergarten with this and what have you. And so we wanted to be able to equip parents, again, it comes back to that with the language and with the knowledge that they could just feel more at ease responding and that they would have a well to draw from of information. And unfortunately, one of the things that we found, I know Suzanne, probably you have found this too in talking with folks over the years, is that more often than not, overwhelmingly so, I would say upwards of 90%, what we hear from parents over and over again, and this is now even generational. It's not just, oh, this is the way it was back in the 50s or whatever. What we hear from parents is, you know, my mom and dad really never talked to me about this, so I don't know what to say. I don't know where to start. That is one of the most common comments, and one of the other most common comments is, if only you had been around when I was growing up, I would have made some different decisions. And it's just, I mean, it's heartbreaking when you hear that, and you know it's true. So anyhow, all that to say, and I'm happy to explain the other programs, or you can go on our website, but we do have 4 different programs that are, 2 of them are parent only, 2 of them are for parent with their son or daughter.
Thank you. Just wanted to add something that I didn't mention in the talk, but Teen Star does definitely involve parents, and the curriculum is set up with 3 parent meetings, beginning of the year, middle, and then end, and an option to add 2 more. So we could theoretically be meeting with the parents every other month throughout the program. So we certainly honor and respect the parents as the primary educators of their children and involve them, which is so absolutely important.
I have actually more than one question, but both of you said that there were some information about how attitudes changed or the maintenance of virginity, but neither of you told me the time. How far out are we talking? Like, it sounds like your surveys were maybe directly after the program. Do you have any data about like 5 years later? Because you're talking about 12 and 13-year-olds. How do they make it through high school and through college? Do we have any data on that? And then for either program, how is the program funded? Is it the parents pay for that directly, or how does that go? And then I know there's so many things, but how do, like, at least in California, we have sex education happening in schools that is very not faith-based at all. And so how is that affecting, how is either your talks affecting what they're coming in with, or, how is that interacting together?
Sure. So let's see if I can remember. I think the first one was about the studies, and our most recent study, given that our founder's 90 years old, was done in 2014, so that's 4 years ago, and it was at the conclusion of a program. So after a school year, they did a study to say, where are we now, after 9 months of classes. So that's a very good question. I do not know how far out it's been carried. So you're asking, does the behavior stick?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very good question. And that sounds right. That sounds right to me. Then as far as the cost, so Teen Star is based on the Billings model. I don't know how many of you were here with the earlier panel, but Billings and Teen Star, we do not tell the teachers how much to charge or if they should charge. So each teacher decides for themselves based on their area and their socioeconomic group that they're working with, if they want to charge, and if so, how much. So it's very much an independent activity. There are some settings where there will be some subsidy from, like I talked about, the USAID got, there was some monies to put towards that. So it's very individual, and there's no cost for materials because the materials are the teacher manuals. We don't have textbooks for the children. Remember I talked about self-discovery. They just get very basic materials. They get like a beginning, what we call a wetness chart. So they just learn to describe what they see in their own words. Then we go to a more formal chart. And we actually discourage the use of fertility tracking apps while they're learning. It's just like anybody learning to read or write. You start on paper, and then you move to the computer. So, and then the third question, I think, was, what was the third question? I can't remember.
Oh, how does the sex ed kind of
yes. So that's a very good question. Planned Parenthood is very strategic in the way that they approach this subject. One of the things that we know is that it does take young women about 3 cycles before they begin to understand, before the light sort of goes on and they begin to integrate this information. And Planned Parenthood does have 3-month programs that they run, 3 at a time, one after the other, so that they get a third of the kids each 3 months. And they build sort of a peer pressure, oh, you haven't done this, well, you should do it. So what we do is we work with the parents who don't want their kids in those programs to opt out, and then they can tell the school that the kids are taking an alternative. And that usually works, as long as they're willing to do that. So we just go our separate ways and do what we're doing, and there hasn't been any problem with it. It's mostly the parents being aware that there are alternatives, and Teen Star is one. Good questions.
I have a few different questions, so I might just sit up here as I formulate them. But one is that I work with a lot of, with our Catholic Medical Association group in our diocese, and out of that grew a NFP discussion group that I kind of coordinate, and we have a number of teachers, and they're often bringing up the issue that teaching natural family planning in marriage prep is too late. And I see somewhat, especially with Teen Star, that it's already integrated with a natural family planning program, the Billings method, as I understand. So has there been an effort on your part or an interest on diocese or Catholic school systems part of providing this more generally? Like, is this in diocese or Catholic schools?
Maybe, do you want
Either one.
Yeah, why don't you
Both.
Okay, I'll start. It's interesting that you asked that question, too, because the woman who started Family Honor back 30 years ago, ironically, we celebrated our 30th anniversary as an organization this year, as Humanae Vitae is celebrating the 50th. But one of the reasons Family Honor was started was the person who started it, the woman who started it, was the director of NFP for our Diocese of Charleston, South Carolina. and she was seeing young people coming to her as part of marriage prep to learn NFP who, you know, you hate to say this because these are young people, but it was almost too late. They're already living together overwhelmingly. If you talk to priests all over the country, a lot of times we're talking like 90% of the young people coming to get married are already sexually active. They're already living together. And so that, in combination with a lot of other things that were happening at the time, including theology of the body coming to the forefront and what have you, really helped propel her to, together with some other concerned parents and professional folks, to start Family Honor. And with the idea being, even though we do not specifically teach young people how to chart per se, but what it is, yeah, it's laying the groundwork. And we had one of our former board members basically say a few years ago, you know, really what y'all are doing is early marriage preparation. And that's exactly right. It's getting, again, young people and their parents used to the language, used to the idea of this is positive. It's not all about disease prevention, you know, and just that going down kind of that dark road. It's about learning the language of the body, respecting the body, so that really, and I see with us and with Teen Star and with some of the other programs that are out there, it's just this lovely flow from one stage to the next stage to the next stage. And I think that's just a tremendous thing.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. In fact, there was a panel earlier this morning on the different NFP methods, and one of the things that the speakers all came to agree on is that, gee, you know, there's no need to have any competition between methods because there's something for everyone. I mean, our Lord has provided a beautiful curriculum for everyone, and we even talked about internationally, you know, every place, and I would say every age as well. And one of the things that I think is really important is to separate NFP, natural family planning, from fertility literacy. And that's not to say that natural family planning is not part of fertility literacy. It is a part, but that's the point. It's just a part. For young people, it's more really about identity. That's really what it comes down to. Because one of the problems with teaching natural family planning is to engaged or young married couples is that they've passed that psychosocial task of developing identity. They're now forming intimate relationships. So they've dealt with their sexuality, their orientation. They've kind of, you know, resolved those questions and made those choices and arrived at where they are. Whereas with teenagers, they're still discovering themselves. They're still figuring out who they are. So I like to think of it, I tend not to, Teen Star tends not to put NFP in the same, you know, sentence as fertility literacy or fertility awareness. There has definitely been an interest in the diocese up in Northern California where I am. The problem is the time, because students are so impacted, not only with school and extracurricular, but if they're also maybe going through confirmation preparation, which is now a 2-year program, or they're doing any kind of involvement with Life Teen or Edge youth ministry, they're just booked. They're booked. So that's the hard part. And I'm kind of waiting to see when this catches on, what's going to fall off. Something's going to have to give, but this is definitely an important thing, and I think it's worth putting it in there. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes. And Suzanne, if I could say one more thing. One of the things that in the big picture that I think it's important to do, if y'all are considering some type of chastity curricula or again, you know, fertility awareness, all of these are so interconnected, really. But one of the things that we developed over the years, because we would have people coming to us and it was like they wanted something. We need to get something into our diocese. And, you know, it's almost like they needed to check off the box for their diocese or parish. And one of the things that we came up with at Family Honor is like it's a checklist, and I'm happy to send this to y'all, anybody that wants it, just let me know. But it just goes through, it's a few questions, basically to help you identify with your parish or with your diocese, with your group, parents group, whatever, what do you want to accomplish with this? In the big picture, where are you going with this? What ultimately do you want to see happen? And so I think it's kind of important before you just automatically say, oh, that sounds good, or that would probably be the easiest thing for us to do in our area, is think about where you want to go with this. What is the big picture? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to see happen with your young people? And then try and speak with one voice with your parish or your diocese. Get everybody rowing in the same direction, because that's where you get someplace, when everybody has the same vision and you're rowing in the same direction. So anyhow, there you go. Mm-hmm.
I guess just one or a couple of follow-up things. I was on the Teen Star web page a few months ago, and I think there are a number of research projects or research studies that are listed there.
Yes, there, you know, I have to say I'm not right up to the minute with what's going on, but we definitely get funding. So the way it often works, like I said, with USAID, is that if we can apply for a grant for an underserved population, we can get funding to run a program as long as we do research. So it's kind of a win-win, you know. And one of the great places to look up the efficacy of Teen Star is a website called Child Trends. TRENDS. They did a mega study of over 100 sex ed programs, and Teen Star was ranked very effectively. It's in the highest bracket. So Child Trends, TRENDS. It's a big national think tank with everything to do with children, health, education, welfare, all that kind of thing. I love the way Brenda said, think where you want to go with this. And I will say that Teen Star's ultimate goal is to have mothers teach their daughters and fathers teach their sons. We're in a period now where that can't happen as well, you know, unless we can teach the mothers and fathers catch up in a sense. But John Billings himself said, ideally, we'll work ourselves out of a job. So that's why we got to figure out a way to do it until it's just something that we all do.
I guess I have two questions, and one's basic to the second question. Do you offer an opportunity for the kids to ask questions during your sessions? Yes. Okay. So my real question would be, are you getting questions about gender dysphoria and what they're hearing among their peers and from the schools that they're coming from, and or homosexuality? And are they reporting a better understanding or a more clear understanding of the truth about their gender, especially in light of, obviously, the Catholic truth, or the truth about the human person, which would be, you know, boys are boys and girls are girls? Is anything coming out of that, and have you had to adapt at all to accommodate just the overall bombardment that we're seeing right now?
Those are really good questions. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if it's because we basically do the bulk of our programs through Catholic parishes and schools, we're not really getting that many questions, and this you may find a different experience, about gender or gender dysphoria or that kind of going down that particular road. I tell you what we are getting questions on, and especially from the parents. And that is pornography, and all the related topics: pornography, sexting, the websites, the dangerous websites, the latest, you know, kind of things that kids are into, and how they are talking to each other, be it online or via text or whatever. That is probably the single biggest issue right now. In terms of what we're hearing from parents. The kids themselves aren't saying a whole lot about it. They'll affirm that that's what's out there. They absolutely will. But it's the parents that there's a level of desperation there, because they see and hear and find out ultimately what's going on. And they are just hungering for information on what they can do to help protect their child online, what they can do if they find out that their child has been engaging in this behavior, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have started to address that a little bit more, in particular in our Real Love and Real Life program. And then one of the things that we typically do too is follow up after a program with e-blasts and communication with parents, as we keep our ear to the ground with resources and just all manner of things that we want to get out there to parents, just to keep those conversations going and to help them find ways to protect their kids.
Are they reporting back positive, like that it is doing what you're hoping
Yes, we don't necessarily get past a certain point. It's not that we're in constant communication with all the folks that go through our programs, but typically we do hear back anecdotally that yes, all this is very, very helpful. And I think even parents sometimes that come into our programs with maybe a skeptical attitude, in particular where some parishes make our program mandatory, and you have parents coming in that are thinking, you know, do we really need to go this? The attitude change midway through the first session is noticeable, basically with both the parents and the kids, that they realize, okay, I see where this is going to help me.
So my experience is different, and sad to say the area where I am from, there is a discussion, or I should say actual cases of transgender. And I myself was impacted because this is not Teen Star, but I was hired to work as a nurse at a summer camp, which I was delighted to get that, you know, seasonal job. And then during orientation was told that I would be responsible for administering the cross-gender hormones to some of the students. Yes, and so I had to excuse myself from that, which was really difficult because most of the kids were happy, normal kids. But there were some, and it's in a strange way from my area, it's almost kind of a, how could I say, cool thing to be able to, you know, experiment with this. But what I found is really hopeful is something you might want to check out online is there's now a small group that's begun to emerge called Desisters, D-E-S-I-S-T-E-R. Cease, it comes from cease and desist. These are people, men and women, who have begun the pathway to change gender and then not deceased, I'm sorry. They have desisted. In other words, they've stopped. They've said, this is not good. It's not making me happier. It's not solving my problems. And so they've actually, you know, retreated from that. So that's a hopeful sign. And they're starting to tell their stories about what their experiences. As far as Teen Star is concerned, we absolutely ask questions and we encourage the students to ask questions. And that's part of the reason why it's a year-long program, or I should say a school year, because we really want to build relationships and encourage that open discussion and that trust. So again, this issue doesn't come up too much among Teen Star participants, but it's definitely in our cultural milieu. It's definitely there. So, yes. Northern California.
Well, we're based in South Carolina, but we have affiliates that do programs in other states as well.
And
Experience that you just discussed right before hers, you were in, you're from South Carolina?
Right.
And Teen Star is also all over the country. I just am the western region, but we have teachers in New York and DC and Florida, and I'm trying to think where else, Washington State. So we have, you know, we're kind of sprinkled around the country and hoping to have more teachers.
Northern California explains your experience with this. South Carolina explains hers.
Yes, very, very much so. You hit the nail on the head, yes.
Well, I may add, though, that even in Central Texas, as a pediatric nurse practitioner in urology, you get yourself fired from your job if you promote the American College of Pediatricians research on this subject. This is what happened to me in the last year. The American College of Pediatricians is different than the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I think that's really important for anyone in this room to understand the difference. How that started was that the American Academy of Pediatrics, with 60,000 members in the early 2000s, decided that it was just as good to have a adoptive family consist of a mother and the adopted child, or a father and the adopted child. And the pediatricians who were beginning to doubt that and read the research about what happens to children in these families 18 years later and what their lives were really like said, we cannot condone this kind of policy, and formed their own organization, which is now the American College of Pediatricians. And if you go on their website, you will find some very helpful information how to deal with pediatric transgender medicine. And for example, they gave us as a gift for Christmas the junior version of the book Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. There is a middle school version for 8 and 9-year-olds. Actually, it's younger than middle school. And I call that kind of a book a wonderful vaccination against pornography. Talks to the child about the feeling brain and the thinking brain, and it's beautiful. So Good Pictures, Bad Pictures would be something to Amazon or Google or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to just add another thing, but please come forward. We're still within our time. Another quick thing, and that is, what was I going to say? Oh, about this whole gender, confusion. Another interesting fact that I read is that initially this whole thing was more boys who wanted to masquerade as a girl, but it's turned around now. There's more girls that are seeking it. And when I think about what Brenda talked, about regarding the sexting and the degradation of the woman, and the fact that it's such a predatory environment, my heart actually goes out to some of these young women, because I think to myself, they're trying to protect themselves, and this is the only way they know how. But if they learn about their body and they understand the power of their cycles and their fertility, that's a powerful lesson. That's an empowering lesson. That's a revealing lesson to them. So I really think that more important than any curriculum or program is the body itself.
I had the wonderful opportunity to know about both of your programs before I came. I'm a nurse practitioner. I work with the Friends of Fertility Care in Philadelphia. I have a friend in the Bronx, Dorothy Deganzik, and she's been doing your programs. And when you have that feedback, and it's an urban environment, the Bronx, if you can tell, it's really heartbreaking, some of the things that these young women are saying, but they appreciated the program because they weren't getting it from their mother, who's now living with another man and all of that, But I have to say that book, Our Power to Love, is excellent. We've been very fortunate to be able to purchase them from you. Every year we have what we call the Mother-Daughter Fertility Appreciation Program, and I have to say it's been going on for at least 5 years, and it just gets bigger and bigger every year. I'm sorry we don't have the father-son ice cream social, whatever they have in other places. We don't have enough manpower. But I was surprised. We first started that with the anticipation that we could reach out to public school. And what's been happening is the people that seem to keep coming back and keep telling us that they want it for their other children are homeschooling mothers. And I thought maybe if you had some thoughts on that.
Yes, those are my first and primary families, the students. I've already worked with those families, and they are very open to it. They have the time, and if they don't, they make the time because they understand the importance of it. So that's a rich, if you don't mind, fertile ground for teaching this. Plus, the parents are naturally involved with the children, and the mothers are interested in learning if they don't already know it themselves. So it's a wonderful resource for us.
And I would just add to that, too, we have certainly the bulk of our audience where we go out to do our programs is Catholic parishes, but we also have a significant number of homeschooling moms and dads that, yes, just retain that interest from year to year. They want to bring each successive child through one of our programs, so we absolutely find that.
I actually noticed that we're just out of time, so I'm going to let you ask the last question.
I was just going to ask, do both of you, I don't remember in Family Honor, do you talk about going to like the mucus and understanding of the woman's cycle through mucus, or because you talked about wetness that All Star does, but in your program, do you do that as well?
It's a very basic approach. It's really mainly done in our Real Love and Real Life program, and the way we do it, we talk about the seasons of the cycle. So we talk about summer, fall, winter, and spring, just in terms of observing the signs of mucus and the dry time, the dry season, et cetera. So it's a very basic presentation, but it starts to lay the groundwork and plant the idea, I would say, yes. And then certainly in the Q&A portion, if the kids or their parents have more detailed questions or want a little bit more information, we'll explain a little bit more. So.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all, and thank you, Brenda. This has just been really wonderful.